Lauren here. Thanks for tuning into my latest video. Welcome to part one of my new mini Summer Capsule Wardrobe blog series and YouTube series as well, which I'm going to be continuing from now over the next 4 weeks. If those of you that have watched my videos before will know that I absolutely love making my own clothes, hence the reason that I have a fabric shop. But quite often what I find happens is that I'll make too much of one type of garment, or I'll make something that doesn't quite match with the rest of my wardrobe. So what I've aimed to do with this little sort of mini series is pick 4 patterns that are really versatile. They've got lots of different options, and create a little sort of collection of clothes that you could really easily mix and match, and that are all just really summery and nice. And all of the samples that I've made all kind of tone with the same sort of colour palette, so it means they're just all going to look really nice together, and I can just sort of change the tops and bottoms in and out, and it'll all just sort of tone together nicely. So I hope you're going to find it really inspiring. So each week I'll just be featuring a different pattern, and I'm going to show you the example that I've made, and also give you lots of top tips as well and how you can create a really lovely garment yourself from it. You can also refer to the blog post, which has got lots more information on the fabric that I've used in the pattern, and links to that on the website as well. And what we've also done for each pattern is make up a little fabric pattern and notions pack, so it's got absolutely everything in it that you would need to create the garment yourself. We've got limited stock of those, so if you want one, then you need to be quick on those ones. We've just got limited numbers, but all of the information will be on the blog, which I'll link to below as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you the first pattern that I'm going to be featuring, which is the Pauline Alice. It's the Rosari Skirt, which is this one here. So it's classic A-line skirt with a button down front, and it's got 2 length versions. So it's got this mini version and then a midi version as well, which comes below the knee, so it's sort of kind of hitting mid-calf or just above your calf, depending on what height you are and what length your legs are. And it comes up to sort of where your natural waistline is. So it's, I wouldn't say it's high waist, it just comes to your actual waist. So if you're used to wearing things more hipstery, then it's going to be a bit higher than that as well. But I think it's really a really flattering shape, and will certainly help to give definition to your waist as well. So you can use any sort of medium, it says medium weight woven fabrics. So I've used our mid-blue designer denim fabric, which has got quite a nice decent bit of body to it, which I think is good because it helps to hold that A-line shape. But I think it would also look really nice. We've got a new collection of linens in the shop as well, and I think it would look really nice in those as a more kind of much lighter weight sort of breezy version. But I thought denim's quite classic, it's going to go with lots of things, and thinking ahead beyond the summer as well, I think it would look really cute with tights and boots in the winter as well. So depending on what fabric you use, you can sort of choose how versatile you want it to be, or how long over the course of the year you want to wear it. As well as the length options that you have with this skirt, you've also got pocket options as well. So there's 4 different options to choose from. You've got the little sort of side pockets with the coin pocket as well, which you sort of typically see in jeans. You've got patch pockets, which is the pockets that I chose. You've also got patch pockets that have got an inverted pleat on them and a little flap over the top. If you are using a sort of thicker fabric, it might feel quite bulky, so just bear that option in mind if you are using a thicker fabric. And then the last option you've got is a little zipper one as well. So they're all really cute versions. It's also got button loops as well, which I think just add a nice touch. It just helps to make the garment look a little bit more professional. So I chose to make size 38, but the size range is from 34 to 48, and that is for a waist. So the smallest waist size it caters for is 24.5, and then the largest is 35.5. I actually also took mine in along the centre back seam, so I would suggest doing that before you put the waistband on, is to just sew the sides together, sew your back seam, get the button placket sort of set up at the front, so you know where you can kind of overlap it, and then just pin it together and try it on. And I pinched out probably about 1.5 to 2 inches at the centre back. So it is much easier to do that before you've put the waistband on, so definitely try it on. And the other thing that I would suggest doing is also cutting the waistband a little bit longer than you know you'll need it, because I took that in from the centre back seam, but my waistband, it did fit, but I think if I hadn't taken that out, the waistband might have been a little bit too small. So I would, it's really easy to cut a waistband back down again, so I would just make it a little bit longer than what you need, and you can just trim it to size depending on what adjustments that you make. So I ended up doing in between a sort of mini and a midi length. So what I actually ended up doing was cutting out the midi length, the longer one, and then before I hemmed it, I just tried it on. So I sewed the button placket sort of part way down. I just left it open a little bit at the bottom so I could sort of finish it off when I'd chosen the length. So just tried it on, pinned it together, had a little look in the mirror, and then worked out where I wanted the finished length to be. Now, there wasn't actually any shortening, lengthening markings on this pattern. You could add them at that stage if you wanted to, but I just cut it out and then decided afterwards. But if you do that once you've already cut it out, what you'll need to do is just mimic the shape of the hem at the bottom. So hopefully you can see here, if I hold it up against my top, you can see that there's like a little sort of step at the centre front, and that's just where the placket and the hem sort of come together, that shape. So if you do end up shortening it once you've cut it out, you just need to mimic that shape. So I've got a little picture on the blog that just shows you in sort of how you can do that. It's really easy, it's just a case of measuring a little bit higher there. But if you work out what you want your finished length to be, and then if you just read ahead in the instructions to where the hemming bit is and just add on what the hem is, I think it's 1 centimetre here and 2 here, so wherever you want your finished length to be, you would just make sure it was a couple of centimetres longer than that. So that's for the hem there. But as I was making the skirt, I made a few little videos just to give you some top tips as well. So I've got one on top stitching. I'm also going to show you how to use these vario pliers, which I totally love. You'll have seen me using these in blog posts before and videos before. Love my vario pliers. I use them to put the buttons onto the skirt. And then I'm also going to show you how to use this new tool that I've got, which is most exciting. It's called a Simflex expanding sewing gauge. It's really, really cool, and it helps you to evenly mark out buttonholes. So I found that on the pattern there was quite a lot of buttons, and because I was choosing to do the silver buttons on mine, I just felt like it looked like a little bit too many, so I just recreated new buttonhole positions nice and evenly with this gauge. So my little video will explain more about how to use that as well. What I want to show you now is a few things that you can try on your machine to get the tension right when you do top stitching. So when I do top stitching, I would use top stitch thread in the top of the machine and normal thread in the bottom. And one thing that you can try is using a specific top stitch needle, which is what this one is just here. And the difference with this needle is it's got a slightly bigger eye. So the one in this hand is just a normal size 90, and you can see that the eye is a little bit smaller than the top one. The reason why it is bigger is to just reduce the tension. If you're forcing a large thick thread like the top stitch thread through a small eye, it will increase the tension of it and just affect your stitches a little bit. So I've now got my machine set up to do the top stitching. So I've got my top stitch thread here, like using Gutermann, and then I've got my normal polyester thread in the bobbin, and I've just got it in a blue colour which matches my denim. And the other thing that you might find you want to play about with is the needle position and also the tension as well, but we'll just try the needle position first of all. So for my machine, I prefer to have the needle sitting in the middle of the foot, so I'm just going to swap it over. I just find it easier to line it up when it's that way round. So now we can just do a little bit of practice stitching and then just see what that looks like. So do it through a couple of layers like that. So just a little line and then have a look at how that's come out. So I think that looks not too bad, but if you look closely, it's more prominent at the start of the line of stitching, But what you can see if you look closely is that the bobbin thread has been slightly pulled through to the top. So because it is a blue thread, you still get that stitch definition because the blue thread is sort of breaking up the gold thread on the top. But if you do look closely, you can see that the blue thread is actually getting pulled to the top. So that means that the tension of the top thread is still a little bit too high. So what we can do is just reduce that. So on my machine, I use this is my tension here. So if I just reduce that, I can just try reducing it to 3. So it's going to depend on your fabric as well, and how thick your fabric is as to whether you need to adjust that or not, by how much you have to adjust it. So it's always just best just to practice through the same number of layers that you will be stitching on your final garment. You can have a little look at that, and yeah, I think that looks a bit better. You're getting more of a sort of, if I hold it kind of side on, you can see that the gold thread is kind of going up and down a little bit more, whereas in my first one it's almost just sitting flat on the fabric. So that's a little bit better, but we could try reducing it even a little bit more. The risk is if you reduce it too much, that it starts to look a little bit loose on the top. So it's just about practicing and getting it right for that situation that you're in, how many layers you're sewing through, how thick your fabric is, etc. So here you can see that it's much better now. We've got much clearer stitch definition. You can see that gold top stitch thread is really going up and down, which is what we want. But in places it is maybe just very slightly too loose. Like here, when you sort of pull on it a little bit, it's starting to come away. Now, I mean, that might not matter. Top stitching thread generally is decorative in most cases. So I think you would have to just use your judgment on that and whether that was going to be a problem or not. But it's, you know, as you can see, with just a few slight changes in tension, you can get different results. And yeah, that will vary depending on how many layers you're going through as well. So it's always best just to check. Now that I have got my tension set up for the top stitching, I'm going to show you how I would then top stitch round this curved pocket here, which was the sort of patch pocket version I chose for my Rosari skirt. So you can see I've already done the top hem and finished that of the pocket, and I've pressed the edges back and trimmed the cut notches in it here just so that it goes nice and curvy. And what I'm going to do first of all is the outside edge top line. And to secure it, we're going to do a little bit of a reverse. So normally I would go forward, go back, and then go forward again, but that can start to look quite clumpy and bulky in top stitch thread. So what I'm actually going to do is start here, reverse back to that point, and then go forward. And hopefully that should be enough to hold everything in place. So the needle's going to come down in the middle of my foot, and where I'm going to line it up to, if I just take the foot off, and then hopefully you can see it a bit clearer, I'm going to line it up just with that little marker on my foot here. So it's kind of just on the inside of where this clear plastic bit is and the metal bit is. So your foot might look different from mine, and that doesn't matter. The key thing is that you find something to be a reference point, and then you keep that consistent all the way around. So I'm going to start here, which is where the bottom line of this stitching was, and I'm going to reverse right away. So I'm going to do a couple of stitches back and then come forward, and then now I'm going to go right round the edge. So I've got this fold here lined up just on the inside of the little mark on my foot, and the key is just to take it nice and slow. Make sure you've got plenty of light as well, so that you're maybe doing it in daylight if you find it hard to see. And then as I approach the corners, what I want to do is just to make sure that distance is going to get kept even. And what you might even do is just lift the foot slightly and turn it a little bit. So like what you would do if you were going round a 90-degree corner, but you're just shifting the fabric a little bit, and that can just help to reduce the drag on the fabric, and it just means that you can sort of keep going round in a nice even curve without getting any sort of pinch points or ruffles or anything like that. So I just continue all the way around. So now that I've been all the way around, I can use this first line here as a guide for sewing my second one. So I'm going to just line it up again so that it starts on that bottom line of stitching. I'm going to reverse back and come forward like I did before. And now what I'm going to do is make sure that this existing line here lines up with the sort of middle of the metal bit on this side of the foot. So again, I'll do my little reverse few stitches to start, and then I'll come all the way forward. So you're just always just making sure that this line here is going to line up with, I'm going to do it with this little marker, but again, if your foot looks different, it might be a different place, that doesn't matter. The key thing is always consistency, and that's how you make the pocket look really neat. So again, as you come round the corner, you might have to just pause, lift the foot a little bit and turn round, just so that you get that nice, even, smooth curve. The key is just to take it really, really slowly so that you maintain control all the time. So as you can see, I've got a really nice even line of double top stitching, and that's really going to secure the pocket on and just gives a nice finish to the patch pocket as well. So what I'm going to show you now is how I placed out the buttons on my Rosari skirt. So what you can see at the moment is where the pin markings are where the buttonhole placements from the pattern were. So I just lined once I'd made the skirt, I just lined the pattern paper up and then just marked where all those pin marks were. And I'm going to use these silver jeans buttons, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of buttons, and I feel like with these sort of bright shiny ones it just looks a bit too much. Maybe with a more sort of subtle button this number would be fine, but I don't think it necessarily needs this many buttons to hold it together. It is an A-line skirt, so but you know, there's not really going to be anything kind of pulling the buttons apart or anything by the time you kind of get down here. It's obviously a bit more fitted at the waist. So what I'm going to do is have less buttons, and I'm going to show you a little tool that you can use that makes that really quick and easy. So what to do is just if we take off all the buttons just now, and then if I decide where I want my bottom one to be, so I think I might want my bottom button to be about there. I know I'm going to have one in the waistband anyway, so what I'm going to show you how to use is this thing here. So it's quite reflective in the camera, and it is a Simflex expanding sewing gauge. So this is the little sort of leaflet that it comes with, and you can use it for pleats or shearing elastic or smocking. That's the other sort of suggested uses, but I think I'll probably use it most for buttonholes really. So as you can see, as you stretch it out, the little prongs of it just get evenly spaced out. So what you can then do is put it on where you want your top button to be, where you want the bottom button to be, and then you're going to place a buttonhole on all of the top of the little prongs. So we can just sort of get an idea of what it looks like. It might help to just quickly visualise how many buttons we actually want. So if I put a button now on each bit, and then we can sort of see what that looks like. So there was 10 before, now we've got 2, 4, 6, 8. So then we can see what it looks like with maybe even less. So we could just stretch it out a little bit more, and then as you can see, they still just sort of remain evenly placed. So if I keep the top and bottom one in, and then just put another one at all the other points, like so, like that. And then you can just decide how many buttons you actually want. What I'm going to show you now is how I would position where my buttonholes actually go in relation to the edge in this sort of button band area here, which will all depend on the precise size of your button as well. So depending on whether you use a slightly bigger or slightly smaller button size than what's suggested in the pattern. So what I've done is I've got a practice buttonhole here, and I've decided to just do it in blue thread that matches the fabric because I think it looks a lot neater. So I've done my test buttonhole, and I used my button to make sure that was the right size. So what I'm going to do now is just cut this open and check that my buttonhole actually goes through it. So you might be able to see just at the top here how it's sort of rounded. So I chose that buttonhole setting that instead of like a rectangle, it gives you this sort of round bit at the top, and that's just because this button's got quite a big shank, so it's just to create a bit of sort of extra room at that end of the buttonhole. And what I'm going to do to pierce a hole in that top section is I'm going to use my handy pliers again, which are really useful for doing that nice and neatly. So I've got it on the smallest hole, so it's going to cut the smallest hole that these cutters can make, and I'm just going to line it up right at the edge there, and then give it a good squeeze. Just check I'm not actually catching any of the stitching. So then that just cuts a nice sort of clean, neat hole at the top, and then I can use my seam ripper to just gently rip out the rest of it. Like so, and then you can just sort of cut those threads away. So I think that just gives a bit of a neater finish just at the edge there. And then just check that my button goes through it nice and safely. Yes, it does. So yeah, that's what it'll end up sort of looking like on the skirt. So now when you actually come to decide where to sort of place it onto this band, what I'm going to do is actually cut my test buttonhole down like that, so that I can line it up a bit more precisely, because I obviously want to make sure that the buttonhole is contained within this band, but at the same time, if I have it too close to the edge, what's going to happen is once the skirt's on and it's you know, there's like a little bit of pressure and it sort of gets into position, you don't want the button itself to sort of overhang over this edge of the skirt. So you have to be able to set the button back far enough that when the button is then positioned at this end of the buttonhole, that it's still contained within that section there. So you can use your test buttonhole to sort of measure that up again. So I can't have it any further than starting there really, just at this point, otherwise this stitching will start to just come over here, which isn't so good. So then I would just mark where I want them all to start. So I've positioned where I want the actual button to be, but then I need to know the distance from here. And when my buttonhole on my machine sort of stitches, it starts at this point and then sort of goes back round that way. So the way that I'll feed it into the machine is this way round. So it'll be like this in the machine, and I'll just have my little marker here, and then the machine will know when to stop, so that it shows this size of buttonhole. So I'm going to go and do that now. What I wanted to show you now is how I then use that little chalk mark for the placement to line it up with the foot in my machine. So this is my buttonhole foot here, and it is all ready to stitch my buttonhole. So I want this little chalk mark just to be where those red markers are in the foot. So I want it just to come directly into there. So I would line it up like that and then just start stitching, and it's going to stitch, I've already opened this buttonhole here, so it's going to start here and then work its way backwards to stitch the buttonhole. Now that I have got all of my buttonholes stitched on and I've cut them all open, it's now time to attach my buttons. So I'm going to use my Prim Vario pliers again, these ones here, and the little tool set that comes with the button is this one. So the front of the button is going to clip into there like that, and then the back of the button is going to clip into this side like that, and then that can go into Vario pliers. So in terms of deciding the position of where the button actually goes, we want to make sure that once it's on and the button will sort of naturally get pulled towards this side, this sort of outside edge of the buttonhole, we want to make sure that if that's the case, when that happens, that this button band still covers this one. If you position the button too far over here, what will happen is once it's on and it's getting that natural motion to sort of pull it over happens, you'll get this kind of gap here. So we want to make sure that once it's on and so everything's all in position, that the button bands stay overlapped like that. I'm also starting at the bottom because I want to make sure that my hems are definitely going to line up as well, because the order of construction in this skirt is that you would finish the hems before you come to this stage. So we want to make sure that they are actually going to line up like that. So I've got it all in position, and then what I'm going to do is put my, you could use a pin as well if you didn't have something like this, my chalk pencil just through that end of the buttonhole to make a little mark, and then that's where I'm going to attach my button on. So the way that I like to do it is, rather than making a hole for this to go through, I just use the little sort of pointy bit on here to pierce a hole. So you could do that before you attach it to the pliers if you wanted, but I think I should be fine to just kind of work it out now. So if I feel for where it is there, and then I can just use my thumbs to just ease the fabric over that little spoke, or that little sort of pointy bit. There we go, it's coming, you can see it just popping through. The reason I like doing that is because I think it's just less likely to sort of tear or create a bigger hole in the future. It's almost like you're pushing aside the fibres of the fabric rather than piercing them or cutting them, which is what you would do if you used that. So then once you've got that through, then you just simply make sure it's lined up like that, and then give the pliers a good squeeze, and then your button is on. So it's just really, really easy. Sometimes that bottom bit sticks on, but you can just take it off. So that's our button on, so we just need to repeat that for the rest of the skirt. So the last thing that I wanted to show you in relation to the buttons is where to position the button for the waistband, and you want to make sure that you're far enough over in this direction of the waistband that when the skirt is on and you're wearing it, that you don't risk seeing a bit of this top stitching here behind, because it can create a bit of an optical illusion that you're sort of bulging out of the skirt when you're not. So I would recommend doing that by trying it on, making sure that everything looks nice and straight and even, that stitching's hidden, and then you can stick your pencil through that outside edge of the buttonhole to get the placement for your last button. So I hope you found those little sort of mini videos as I was making the skirt useful. If you've got any questions or anything, just leave a comment for me below and I shall try to help, but I hope it's given you a bit of confidence to just have a go at it. The top stitching thing is a lot of trial and error, and it is going to probably depend on your machine as well, so just plenty practice and hopefully you should get there. So what I want to show you now is just different options that you can do to wear with the skirt. At the moment it's really hot here in the UK. The day that I'm filming this, the forecast is actually for 31 degrees, which is just melting, especially when you grew up in the west coast of Scotland. So I am like in complete summer mode right now, and I can only think to possibly wear sandals with this skirt. Sandals are obviously a really nice option, and here I've got it on with a little pink t-shirt, which is going to be featured in next week's blog post. So stay tuned to find out the specific details of that. It's a Grainline Lark tee, but as I said, I'll be talking about that more next week as well. So I think it looks really cute either tucked in, or you could leave it out as well for a bit more of a breezy look. If you wanted to dress it up a little more, you could wear some nice flats. I've got on my little pink pointy flats here with a nice flowery shirt, which is going to be week 3 of the blog series. It is the Closet Case Fills Cali shirt. And again, I shall give you more details about that as that blog post comes up, but I think it looks really cute, maybe a little bit smarter as well, or for when it starts to get a little bit more chilly, which just seems impossible right now because, as I said, it's just so hot. This is a longer sleeved version of the Grainline Lark t-shirt, and I think it looks really cute with that as well. So you can kind of dress it up a little bit more, you can dress it down. Obviously with my denim version, it is probably going to have a bit more of a casual feel to it, but as I mentioned before, the linens that we've had in the shop, they come in lots of different colours. I think depending on what colour you chose, you could get a sort of smarter version out of it as well. If you're thinking ahead more to, again, like the autumn or winter time, it would look really nice in a cord. So the pattern is really, really versatile. Depending on what fabric you choose, what length you choose, you can get really different looks and different feels to it as well. So I hope that's given you lots of ideas for it. The pattern has been out for a while, so if you just Google image the Rosari skirt, then you're going to see other people's versions as well. It's always really inspiring when you have a look at what other people have made. So thank you for tuning in and watching my video. I'll be back next week, and it is the Green Line Lark next week. So I'll be giving you lots of tips on sewing with jersey and putting in neck bands as well, and showing you the different versions that I've made and the changes that I made to the patterns and different ways that you can alter it. So I hope you can join me for that. But thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.